Have you ever noticed that your child seeks you out, but doesn't seem to fully trust you? That they cry, but don't truly expect to be comforted? That they smile, but there's a hidden tension behind that smile? These are subtle signs. Signs that most parents never notice because they're too busy controlling behaviors, correcting attitudes, shaping the child for the world. But there's something happening in the depths of the child's psyche. Something that doesn't scream, but whispers. Something that doesn't explode, but silently corrodes. And that something has a name: insecure attachment. The child who hasn't developed a secure attachment doesn't stop loving their parents. They just learn not to fully trust that love. They learn that they need to adapt, to perform, to hide parts of themselves to be accepted. And this doesn't happen out of malice. It happens because of unconscious patterns that parents carry without knowing. Patterns that were inherited. Patterns that were passed down from generation to generation, like invisible seeds planted in the soil of the family psyche. Carl Jung, the pioneer of depth psychology, revealed that we are not just isolated individuals. We are carriers of a psychic history that spans generations. The unresolved complexes of the grandparents become the wounds of the parents, and the wounds of the parents become the attachment patterns of the children. This is the cycle. This is the generational labyrinth that most families repeat without realizing it. But you are here. And that means something in you has awakened. Something in you recognizes that there is a hidden truth in the relationship with your child. A truth that needs to be seen. Because attachment isn't about hugging more. It isn't about saying, "I love you" 3 times a day. Secure attachment is about real presence. It's about emotional consistency. It's about the child feeling deep in their soul that there is a safe harbor where they can be exactly who they are, without fear of being rejected, without fear of being abandoned, without fear of losing their parents' love if they don't meet expectations. And when that harbor doesn't exist, the child builds psychic survival strategies. They learn to hide their vulnerability. They learn to compulsively seek approval. They learn to disconnect from their own emotions so as not to overwhelm their parents. They learn to become small, invisible, convenient. And all of this happens in the first few years of life, when the psyche is still being sculpted by the parental gaze. But here is the revelation that changes everything. Most signs of insecure attachment are not obvious. They don't come in the form of explosive tantrums or aggressive rebellion. They come as quiet whispers, as subtle behaviors that go unnoticed, as silent patterns that only someone who is truly present can see. And today, you will learn to see these signs, because seeing is the first step to healing. Seeing is the first step to breaking the cycle. Now, look at yourself. Not at your child yet. Look at yourself first. Because before you recognize the signs in your child's behavior, you need to recognize the patterns in your own way of being present, or absent, or inconsistent, or emotionally distant while physically close. How many times have you told your child that everything was okay, but your entire body was screaming with irritation? How many times have you asked your child to trust you, only to react with impatience the next day to the same vulnerability they showed? How many times have you promised to be present but your mind was elsewhere, solving problems, planning the future, reliving the past? How many times have you demanded an emotional maturity from your child that you yourself have not yet achieved? This is the parental mirror. The child doesn't hear your words. They feel your emotional frequency. They absorb your presence or your absence. They learn about security not from what you say, but from what you unconsciously transmit. And if you carry unhealed wounds, if you never had a secure attachment in your own childhood, if you were raised to believe that emotions are weaknesses and vulnerability is shameful, then you are repeating the pattern. You are transmitting the same insecurity you received. And here is the hard part to accept. You can deeply love your child and still fail to provide a secure attachment. Because love is not enough. What the child needs is a love that is consistent, predictable, safe. A love that doesn't change with the mood of the day. A love that doesn't withdraw when they make a mistake. A love that doesn't demand perfection. A love that allows them to be human. While you repeat the pattern, the child suffers in silence. While you project your unfulfilled expectations, their self gets suffocated. While you demand that they be too strong, too fast, too independent, the child's psyche builds walls instead of bridges. And these walls built so early become the foundation for all future relationships. The child who didn't have a secure attachment becomes the adult who doesn't fully trust, who doesn't allow themselves to be vulnerable, who compulsively seeks external validation, who without knowing repeats the same cycle with their own children. But recognizing this isn't a reason for guilt. It's a reason for awareness. Because guilt paralyzes. Awareness liberates. Guilt keeps you stuck in the past. Awareness allows you to create a different future. And the future begins now. It begins the moment you stop denying and start seeing. Seeing yourself, seeing your patterns, seeing the wounds you carry, seeing how these wounds manifest in the way you relate to your child. Do you recognize this pattern? Do you recognize the emotional inconsistency? Do you recognize the difficulty in being truly present? Do you recognize the fear that your child's vulnerability will put you in touch with your own unhealed vulnerability? If you do, you are on the right path, because we can only transform what we can see. And today you will understand exactly what the subtle signs are that your child does not have a secure attachment. And more importantly, you will understand how these signs connect to your own healing journey. So, why does this happen? Why does a child develop an insecure attachment even when their parents believe they are doing everything right? The answer lies in the nature of the psychic bond that forms in the first years of life. Attachment is not built through grand gestures. It is built through thousands of daily micro-interactions, through the way you respond to crying, through your emotional availability when the child needs you, through your ability to regulate your own emotions so the child can learn to regulate theirs. The child's psyche is like a newly planted garden. It needs fertile soil, consistent water, and constant light. But what happens when the gardener is inconsistent? When they overwater one day and forget completely the next? When they pull up the seedlings because they aren't growing in the direction they imagined? The garden doesn't die immediately. It adapts. It develops shallow roots instead of deep ones. It learns to survive, but not to flourish. Secure attachment is the result of a predictable emotional environment. The child needs to know that when they cry, someone will come. That when they are scared, someone will comfort them. That when they make a mistake, the love doesn't disappear. That when they show vulnerability, they are not rejected. This predictability creates what we call ontological security, the deep certainty that someone is there, that the world is fundamentally a safe place, that they are worthy of love simply for existing. But when the emotional environment is unpredictable, something different happens. The child enters a psychic survival mode. They stop trusting fully and start calculating. They stop expressing themselves freely and start performing. They stop being authentic and start wearing a mask. And this mask, built so early to guarantee parental love, becomes the persona they will carry for their entire life. The false identity that protects the true self but also imprisons it. There are three main styles of insecure attachment. Anxious attachment, where the child is constantly seeking validation and has an obsessive fear of abandonment. Avoidant attachment, where the child disconnects emotionally and pretends not to need anyone. And disorganized attachment, where the child alternates between seeking connection and rejecting it, because the parents themselves are simultaneously a source of comfort and fear. Each of these patterns has specific signs, and these signs begin to appear much earlier than most parents imagine. The most important thing to understand is that insecure attachment is not a fixed diagnosis. It is a pattern that can be transformed. The child's psyche is plastic, especially in the early years. And even if the pattern is already established, conscious parenting has the power to repair, to create new emotional experiences, to offer, for the first time, what was always missing: real presence, emotional consistency, and a love that asks for nothing in return. But to repair, you first need to see the signs that the child is showing subtly every single day. First sign: the child does not seek comfort when hurt or scared. They fall, get hurt, and get up on their own without looking at you. They are afraid, but they don't run into your arms. They cry, but they hide their face. This behavior looks like independence, it looks like maturity, but it's not. It's disconnection. It's the child who has already learned that seeking comfort doesn't bring relief, who has tried before and was not truly comforted, or was comforted inconsistently. So they give up. They learn to manage on their own emotionally. And this, so early on, is devastating, because a child needs to learn that the world is safe through the repeated experience of being consoled. When that experience is lacking, they build a fortress instead of a bridge. They become emotionally self-sufficient not out of strength, but out of desperation. Second sign, the child is excessively compliant and never expresses their own needs. They agree with everything. They never complain. They never ask for anything. They are the perfect child, the one who doesn't cause any trouble. But look deeper. This child is not at peace. They are in survival mode. They have learned that expressing needs is dangerous, that disagreeing could result in rejection, that taking up emotional space might irritate their parents. So they make themselves small. They become invisible. They learn to constantly read the adult's moods and adapt to maintain harmony. This isn't kindness, it's self-erasure. It's the child sacrificing their own self to ensure that parental love doesn't disappear. And this pattern, if not seen and healed, becomes the basis for all future relationships. The person who never asks, who never says no, who lives to please others while completely losing themselves. Third sign, the child alternates between desperately clinging to you and pushing you away. They want to be held, but when you offer, they resist. They ask for attention, but when you give it, they get annoyed. They seek closeness and at the same time fear it. This is the most confusing pattern for parents, because it seems like nothing works. But this alternation isn't a whim. It's a disorganization of the attachment system. It's the child who has learned that their parents are simultaneously the source of safety and the source of threat. That love is unpredictable. That closeness can be comforting one moment and suffocating the next. So they don't know what to expect. They can't fully trust. They live in a constant state of high alert, trying to decipher which version of their parents will show up today. And this internal confusion manifests as contradictory behavior, as a chaotic dance between approach and avoidance, between need and rejection, between love and fear. These first three signs are devastating because they are invisible to the inattentive eye. They don't draw attention. They don't cause immediate problems. They happen in the silence of the child's psyche. But they are there, shaping how the child relates to the world, shaping how they relate to themselves. And if you recognize any of these signs in your child, don't fall into guilt. Step into awareness, because recognizing is the first step to repairing. And repair is possible, always. Fourth sign, the child doesn't spontaneously share what they feel or what happened during their day. You ask how school was, and they answer, "It was fine," without any detail. You ask if they're sad, and they deny it even with tears in their eyes. You try to talk and they shut down. This emotional shutdown isn't shyness, it's protection. It's the child who has already learned that vulnerability isn't safe, that sharing emotions can lead to judgment, minimization, or a lecture. So they keep everything inside. They learn to process alone what should be processed together. And this emotional loneliness, so early on, creates a chasm between the child and the parents. A chasm that only widens with time. Because the more they shut down, the more distant you become. And the more distant you become, the more they confirm the unconscious belief that they can't fully trust anyone. Fifth sign, the child has an excessive fear of making mistakes or disappointing you. They freeze up when faced with new tasks. They hide their mistakes. They lie not out of malice, but out of terror of losing your approval. They study obsessively not because they love learning, but because they need to prove they are worthy. This fear doesn't come from nowhere. It's born from repeated experiences where mistakes resulted in emotional rejection, where failure was treated as a personal shortcoming, where parental love seemed conditional on performance, and the child, unable to bear the threat of losing that love, becomes a perfectionist. But it's not the healthy perfectionism of someone striving for excellence. It's the neurotic perfectionism of someone seeking emotional survival, of someone who believes deep down that they are only lovable when they are perfect. Sixth sign, the child suddenly regresses in their behavior for no apparent reason. They start wetting the bed again after years of being potty trained. They go back to talking like a baby. They start asking to be held constantly. This regression isn't defiance. It's a disguised cry for help. It's the child's psyche saying, "I can't handle what's happening. I need to go back to a time when I felt safer, because something in the present is overwhelming me." And often, that something is the unconscious perception that the attachment is fragile, that the connection with their parents is threatened. that the emotional environment is unstable. The child can't verbalize this, but their body speaks, their behavior screams. And when parents react to the regression with irritation, instead of compassionate curiosity, they confirm the very fear that caused the regression in the first place. Seventh sign. The child has difficulty playing in a relaxed and creative way. They don't allow themselves to be spontaneous. They don't make up crazy stories. They don't make a mess. They play in a rigid, controlled way without genuine joy. Because play is the language of a healthy child's psyche. It's where the true self expresses itself. It's where the child processes emotions, tests boundaries, explores possibilities. But when there is no secure attachment, when there is no emotional space to be authentic, the child loses the ability to play freely. They become too serious, too fast. They carry an internal tension that shouldn't be there, and that tension is the weight of not feeling safe enough to simply be. These 7 signs are not isolated. They intertwine. They reinforce each other, and the longer they go unnoticed, the more deeply they become rooted in the child's psychic structure. But now you know. Now you see. And seeing changes everything. So what do you do now that you've recognized the signs? How do you begin to repair the attachment? How do you offer what you may have never received? The answer doesn't lie in dramatic, sweeping changes. It lies in daily micro-repairs, in small moments of true presence, in subtle adjustments to how you respond emotionally to your child. Start with brutal self-inquiry. Get a journal and answer with radical honesty. What was the quality of the attachment I received in my childhood? Did I feel truly safe to be vulnerable with my parents? Could I make mistakes without fear of losing their love? Did I feel seen, not just for my behaviors, but for my essence? These questions will bring discomfort. They will bring pain. They might bring anger. But they will also bring clarity, because only when you see your own wound do you stop passing it on unconsciously. Second step, observe how you react to your child's moments of vulnerability. When they cry, what is your first impulse? To comfort them or to quiet them? To stay with them in the emotion or to quickly distract them? To validate what they feel or to minimize it by saying it's nothing? Observe without judgment. Just observe. Because transformation begins with conscious observation. You don't have to be perfect. You need to be present. And presence means being with the child exactly where they are, without trying to fix them, without trying to rush them, without trying to mold them. Third step, create predictable rituals of connection. It could be 5 minutes every night before bed where you sit with your child and genuinely ask how they are. It could be a 10-second hug every morning. It could be a weekly walk where you talk without rushing. What matters isn't the grandness of the ritual, it's the consistency, because it's through repetition that the child's psyche learns to trust. It's through predictability that it builds security. Fourth step, repair ruptures immediately. You will make mistakes. You will get irritated. You will react in ways you wish you hadn't. And that's okay. What's not okay is leaving the rupture unrepaired. Go back. Apologize. Acknowledge that you were wrong. Tell the child that they were not the problem, that you were overwhelmed, that you are learning to do things differently. This repair teaches the child something fundamental, that mistakes don't destroy relationships, that true love includes imperfections, that they can trust even when things get tough. Fifth step, seek help if necessary. If you recognize that you carry deep attachment wounds, consider therapy. It's not weakness, it's courage. It's the recognition that you want to break the cycle, but you need support to do it. Because taking care of your own psyche is the most powerful way to take care of your child's psyche. The journey of building a secure attachment is not quick. It's not linear, but it is possible. And every small moment of real presence, every emotionally attuned response, every honest repair builds a new experience in the child's psyche. An experience that says, you are safe here. You are loved here. You can be who you really are here. You've reached the end of this script, but in reality you are just at the beginning of a much bigger journey. Because now you can no longer unsee what you've seen. You can no longer ignore the subtle signs. You can no longer repeat the patterns unconsciously. Something has changed, and that something is your awareness. You are now the observer of your own story. You see the generational patterns that have reached you. You see the unhealed wounds that were being passed down. You see the child before you not just as a project to be molded but as a unique psyche to be honored. And this vision changes everything. Because you are no longer the repetition. You are the cycle breaker. You are no longer the echo of ancestral pain. You are the voice that chooses something different. You are no longer the gardener who pulls up the seedlings because they don't grow in the imagined direction. You are the gardener who respects the unique nature of each seed and simply provides the fertile soil for it to flourish as it's meant to. The child in front of you doesn't need perfection. They need presence. They don't need parents without wounds. They need parents who look at their own wounds with courage. They don't need an emotional environment without conflict. They need an environment where conflicts are repaired with honesty. They don't need conditional love disguised as demands. They need a love that sees them exactly as they are and says, "You are enough." And you who have come this far, who had the courage to look at the signs, who did not deny, who did not hide behind justifications, you are ready to offer this, not perfectly, but authentically, and it is authenticity, not perfection, that creates secure attachment. Now I want to know, which of the 7 signs impacted you the most? Which one did you recognize in your child? Which one made you look at your own childhood? Write in the comments. Share this discovery. Because when you share, you not only process your own journey, you help other parents to awaken too. If this script touched something deep within you, if you felt the courage to look at your own parental shadow, like this video, and if you want to continue this journey of conscious parenting, of breaking generational patterns, of building a new path, subscribe to the channel, because every week, we will dive deeper into the psyche of the parent-child relationship, and you are not alone on this journey. Always remember, the child you are raising is not just their future, it is also the healing of your past. When you offer them what you never had, when you break the cycle, you are not just transforming their life. You are transforming yours. The garden of the child's psyche is in your hands. Tend to it with awareness. Tend to it with presence. Allow the child to flourish.